Hi everybody, we're here to have more fun with plants at the Killingly Public Library. Today's topic is plant rehab, but first we're going to take a look at the terrarium we made last time. We want to check its moisture. We want it to be evenly moist. We won't want it to be dry. We don't want it to be wet. There's no magic formula for adding the water when you make your terrarium. You just have to kind of wing it and then check on it and tweak it a little bit until it evens out. So, I'm looking here. I see condensation. You might or might not see condensation on the glass. That's fine. It means that it's nice and moist. I'm going to look down at the gravel layer, which we provided for drainage, to see if I can find any water in there. I don't really see any. Now, I'm going to do the finger test. Poke around. That feels pretty good. Just kind of moist, not sopping wet, not dry. If it had been dry, we would add a little water, put the lid back on. If it had been too wet, we'd take the lid off and leave the lid off for a couple of days so that some of the water could evaporate. So we'll check on this every once in a while, and eventually it'll all equilibrate and you'll have your beautiful little self-contained mini ecosystem. So, next, plant rehabilitation. Let's take a look at this plant here that we have at the Killingly Library. This is a beefsteak begonia, and you may not have a beefsteak begonia, but all the concepts and techniques that we're going to do today, you could do with your plant whatever you have. So this is looking pretty nice. It's been flowering for a couple of months now. It's almost done. It had beautiful pink flowers. The leaves are deep green, nice and glossy. It's a happy plant. That's because it has the right amount of light, just bright light. It's been watered regularly, and it's been fertilized during its growing season. And also, it's been groomed. When there's something, your plant will have leaves that will die eventually. Just take them off. So this one's back over here. Now, can you see the difference? This is the same variety of plant. Oh, it's so sad. Here we have spent flower stalks. We have crispy leaves. We have pale leaves. Limp stems. Everything is just dull and pale compared to this plant. This plant had too much sun to begin with. It bleached out the color in the leaves. Also, it probably wasn't fertilized, has not been groomed, and it was watered irregularly. It was soaked, then it was forgotten about, dried out. The plant's really stressed. Also, it probably needs to go into a bigger pot. So, let's see what we should do here. Snap off all of the spent flower stalks. If you can't snap them off, you can cut them off. Try to get right down next to where they're attached to the main part of the plant. Alrighty, it's looking better. Then off come all the dead and limp parts. You have to be ruthless when you're rehabbing your plants. Again, I'm trying to get right down to where they join the main plant. Anything that's limp, really ugly looking, off with their heads. I'm going to take this one off too. It's kind of big and straggly. Here's another one. It's starting to turn yellow, so that has to go. What do you think? Looking better? Okay. We're not going to repot this today. We're going to save that for another time when we do basic houseplant maintenance. Right now, this is going to go into some nice bright sunlight. It'll get watered regularly, and it'll come back to life. This is our second candidate for houseplant rehab. This is a bead plant. It's a succulent. It's also called string of pearls. If you look here, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a big gap around the edge of the pot. It's really dry. The soil has just contracted. It's like almost like a rock. And there's hardly any stems, and they look like little threads. The so-called pearls look more like teardrops. They're so dried out and desiccated. So some plants aren't worth saving. This is going to go into my compost pile. And its nutrients, what's left of them, those little molecules will be reborn again in another plant. Kind of reminds me of the books here at the library. We always tell our patrons, if they borrow a book, they don't like it, they don't have to finish reading it. Just bring it back to the library, recycle it, and get a better book. This is a little cutting I took from our bead plant a few weeks ago. It looks pretty good. The beads look round, it's nice and green. This is a houseplant propagation, which will be a topic for the future. In the meantime, have fun with your plants.